The scenario. When you die, you appear in a cinema with a number of other people who look like you. You find out that they are your previous reincarnation. And soon you all begin watching your next life on the big screen. What happens next? He told me to keep quiet during the movie, but at first I didn't understand. I just dumbly asked how I died. I saw him, well, me, try to subdue a laugh as it was explained to me how they'd all watched me choke out on the tiny chicken bone I'd managed to get lodged. Apparently, it was amongst the top 5 worst ways some version of me had left the world. Before I realized I'd never be earning any money again whatsoever. Anyone. My mind felt numb at the thought. It wasn't something that I could wrap my head around. I'd never sit in traffic again, never open my presents at Christmas, never enjoy the bittersweet smell of freshly roasted coffee, never see Lara. I'd left her with all those half-formed plans for the future that we'd never be able to put into action. She was probably laughing right now. It was just her kind of dark humor. My heart felt heavy thinking of her. It was the first time I'd felt anything but shock. Never watch that stupid little eye twitch she does as she falls asleep. Never laugh at her otherwise. Shitty jokes just because she finds them so funny. Never feel her warmth next to me again as I drift off to sleep. No, now I got to watch my next incarnation. Part of me wanted to grab a selection of junk food like I'd usually do. But after I'd got used to the dark, I quickly realized there were no doors. What must have been hundreds of me, this room, and the next life. Suddenly, the screen came to life. The me sat next to me made sure I understood these first few years would be boring. Apparently, every cycle I'm a bad baby. Always crying. Whining. That crying was etched in my brain. The more I listened to it, the more I could hear myself a little in there. It was unmistakable. I watched as this woman, who was my mother, but not my mother, cared for me by herself. It was interesting that she was a single mother too, something my old life had in common with my new. The years dragged by. I went through the motions. I went through school. I made friends. I watched myself scream the most horrible shit at my new mom, this new woman who raised me. I laughed along with my new self and all the others watching. It was just a life, one of billions. I'd never get caught dead listening to techno music. It was me, broadly. But not entirely. The similarities were there, though. I watched as I started college and settled down into a nearby cafe. At this point, I was getting just as bored, watching my life as this new me was living it. I was sitting, sipping on a coffee, doing everything I could to avoid a lecture. I noticed how busy the cafe was, and while I was trying to study, I could see the noise wouldn't allow that to happen, the hum of conversation. I saw myself look up at the seat, no doubt seeing everyone else sitting with someone. That was one thing we had in common, a little bit of perpetual loneliness. I watched myself finish my coffee. I watched myself almost choke on the last drop. For a second, I thought I'd be dying the same way again. But I wasn't choking normally. I just couldn't believe both of me. I watched as Lyra asked me, "Is this seat taken?" Not giving me a chance to answer as she planked herself in the seat across from me. I awkwardly struggled to say something, but all I could get out was a quiet, "You can sit there if you want." I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. I just watched it unfold dumbly. I watched the awkward silence as I could see myself wondering whether to start a conversation. I watched her look at me with that inquisitive look on her face she always had when she expected something. I had to stop myself shouting at the screen. I couldn't just let her walk away. Eventually, after what felt like a lifetime, it was her that broke the silence. She jokingly asked why I was still sitting there when my coffee had been empty the full time. I couldn't feel it, but I knew my face had went red. I joked about how I was just daydreaming and that I didn't want to go to class. "Don't go." I watched myself spend that afternoon with her. I watched myself awkwardly ask, but I couldn't face not seeing her again. Over the next few months, I watched. I felt myself fall in love with her again. I watched myself come up with new inside jokes that were different, yet the same. I watched her do her stupid little eye twitch as she fell asleep. I laughed at her shitty joke just because of how funny she found it. I watched myself sleep next to her, and sometimes as if she was right there beside me, I watched myself do what I'd never managed to do before. All those half-assed plans we had, while not the exact same, were still there in spirit. We traveled together. I watched us have kids. I watched us grow old together. But when I did, and I looked around, I saw the same sense of wonder and happiness over centuries and millennia. And it still touched them the same way it did me. Finally, I watched as she passed away first. The thought that crossed my mind was one of pure joy. She would pass on and enter a cinema somewhere. She would watch her life unfold. Unfold again. For all the differences across her lifetimes. She too would watch us meet each other, watch us fall in love again. Hell, she already had. We had together, even if not physically, and we would forever. I greeted the new me who arrived in the cinema with a smile on my face and told him to enjoy the movie. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for scenarios and stories.